big bubble. Who's closer?
Yeah.
Brother,
Yeah.
and then.
You know, the problem that we discussing here is not a local problem. It's systemic. You can take a kid out of Harlem, man, and take him to Compton, California, or take him to Florida, and you can take him anywhere in this country and drop him down in a community exactly like his, a community of poor people of color, you understand, Latinos, and you drop him down in that community, and he will fit in with everything that's going on in there. This is a national culture, man. What they doing here, I mean, they wear the same clothes. I've been traveling all over the country. They wear the same clothes. They regressing just like chimpanzees with all the, and the rest of that. All the negatives exist all across this country. We can't take time out and fix it child by child. That's not going to work. This is systemic. We have a culture that promotes all the things, man. We're the most violent nation in the world. I mean, we got 170 military bases all over the planet. I mean, we're in everybody's business, and we killing. I mean, we taking these kids and putting them in the military and turning them into serial killers. And then we bring them home, and there's no work for them, there's no place for them to live. And our kids that are here, because the economy is busted, there's no jobs. So you're talking about taking these kids and sitting down and talk to them, and then when I finish talking to them, and then I put them back on the street, and there's no jobs, there's no opportunity, there's no housing, no health care, there's not a caring community there. Instead, we're pouring all this money into this prison industrial complex, and we're neglecting the communities. So one of the things that the organization that I'm working with, which is the campaign to end the new Jim Crow, we say no to prisons, yes to caring communities. Let's take this money out of this that we're pouring into this prison industrial complex and pour it into communities and create communities that provide jobs, health care, opportunity, good schools, good education. But to approach the problem, a systemic problem like this here, it's just like who was it? Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. You understand what I mean? We can attribute it to a ton of different social factors. But the fact of the matter is, there's no, if they go to school, they got people with master's degrees waiting on tables at McDonald's. You understand? This is the reality. And this is what we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to look at it through a different lens than the lens that we traditionally look through things. It's not the individual. We like to blame the victim. Obama said, man, stop whining, pull your boots up. But I ain't got no boots. You understand what I'm talking about? And this is what's happening with our kids out there in the community. I've done a ton of time, in my early life in prison, And I got 4 college degrees, went to Harvard, and traveled all over the country and speak at all the major universities and everything. But I sit down with a kid that ain't got nothing, that doesn't have any kind of future, and the system has nothing planned for him. What can I tell him? I can tell him, man, what the bruises and bumps you're gonna get when you drop out of school, you drop into the streets, from the streets, you drop into the criminal justice system, and they just keep recycling you for decades. That's what he's facing. You know what I'm saying? Unless we can come up with an alternative to gangbanging, an alternative to this youth culture and this lifestyle, unless we can come up with a viable alternative, we have nothing.
Sister there, and then Augustine.
Well, I think there's one thing that we haven't touched on. We're not necessarily forgetting it, but I think we're related, is the role of women in this prison industrial complex, because when the brother's in jail, that, it limits the source of income because maybe he was the provider, and now she's stuck with maybe 3, 4 kids, maybe no kids, but she's still struggling, And also women who are in prison, the way they are treated, especially women who have children. These babies, they have no birth options. They have to lay down, have the baby, and the baby is ripped from their arms, and they go back to their cell, and they have a child in the world, and what's the future of this child, So I think it's very important to remember that this affects women just as much.
Augustine?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's part of the way that it doesn't just affect the person directly, but it actually reverberates throughout the whole community. And yeah, one of the main people to feel it are the women and the families of the people who are actually locked up, beaten, arrested, shot. because I mean, just even having somebody on the inside and all of the stress and the work that is involved in that, that is a job in itself. And then raising kids by yourself, all that, that's a big problem. I'm glad that you brought it up. I really liked what you were saying about, like, basically, it's not enough to just scare them straight. Or I don't know if that's really what we're trying to get at with, like, what you were saying, but it's not enough to just tell them, like teach them better. Of course, that's a big part of it, but it's like, you got to give them alternatives as well. Because if there's no alternatives, then, like you said, they're just going to go back to doing whatever there is to do, because we don't have a lot of options. And so, linking that to your question in the back, brothers coming out of jail and actually serving their communities. I didn't actually know that you were locked up. Yo, that's great that you're actually, like, serving, like, serving the people. I know you've been locked up as well. I mean, yeah, that's a great thing. And I think a big part of it is, because we mentioned that the struggle is going to have to come from the people most directly involved, but when we say that, we think of, like, actually the communities that are terrorized, but we don't actually think of the people actually behind bars. What is the potential for them to achieve liberation? You know, jail has often been talked about as universities of criminology, but they need to be transformed into universities of liberation.
You know,